let me introduce our speaker in the afternoon, Andrew Chaikin, space author and historian, and I must add, personal friend. I've really enjoyed getting to know Andy over the last few years, working very closely with him. Andy is an award-winning science journalist and space historian. He has authored books and articles about space exploration and astronomy for more than 25 years.
The really significant fallout from the strains, traumas, and endless experimentation of Project Apollo has been of a sociological rather than of a technological nature. Techniques for directing the massed endeavors of scores of thousands of minds. This is potentially the most powerful tool in man's history. That is quite a statement. In fact, a lot of people felt that way, people within NASA, people like Jim Webb, the administrator of NASA, and a lot of people thought that this was such a powerful tool that you could now use it to solve the world's problems, right? How many of you have heard the phrase, if they can put a man on the moon, why can't they fill in the blank, right? Everything from curing cancer to solving the problems of the inner cities. Turns out it's not quite so easy to take a management solution for what is basically a gigantic engineering project and apply it to social problems and other kinds of non-engineering things. But this is really a profound statement. So what I'd like to do is try and break that down. And as I have done my research and thought about this, and believe me, this is not to say that I've covered, you know, the be-all and end-all list, right? I mean, some of you either here or watching on the web may come up with other ideas, and I'm sure I'll hear from you. But this is my take on the principles behind Apollo's management triumph. Okay. Number one, a clear and compelling goal that comes from the top. Number two, sufficient resources to accomplish that goal. Number three, a systems approach to managing complexity. And I'll explain what I'm talking about when I get to that. Number four, the optimum solution could win, even against powerful opponents, by the way. Number five, you reduce risk by designing for simplicity and redundancy. Number six, test, 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 but test under the conditions in which you fly. You may have heard the phrase, test as you fly, fly as you test. It sounds like you're doing everything at the same time, but that's not what it means. It means test the way you fly and fly the way that you test. Number seven is what-if thinking. One of the most important bullet points on this whole list. 8, accountability at all levels of the program. And number 9, may surprise some of you, but maybe not, luck. And we'll get to that, and I'll explain why I say that. Okay, let's go through these. Kennedy got up before Congress and gave arguably one of the most clear and compelling goals that any leader has ever given. In fact, Dave Scott, who was the commander of Apollo 15 when I interviewed him in 1987, said to me, probably one of the clearest definitions of an objective or a destiny that mankind has ever experienced has been man, moon, 1970. How could it be any clearer than that? Now, we all know that's part of the story. We all know that Kennedy got up there and said very clearly something that took people's breath away, and in the case of Chris Kraft, caused them to momentarily doubt his sanity. But what's important for this conversation is to understand what that does to the organization. Because at any point when you come up against a difficulty, the response to that difficulty is going to be modulated, so to speak, by the clarity of the goal and how compelling the goal is. And there's a wonderful quote that Charles Murray and Catherine Cox put in their wonderful book, Apollo, the Race to the Moon, from the Apollo program manager, Joe Shea. Down at Houston, we could argue like hell, but afterwards we would be out in the parking lot and look up at the moon and say, you really want to go there? And of course, everybody knew what the answer was. Okay, number 2, sufficient resources to accomplish it. Well, that fellow there, Jim Webb, who was NASA's administrator at the time of Apollo, at least up through the start of the lunar missions, is much of the reason why there were sufficient resources. Webb was, before he came to NASA, had been director of the Bureau of the Budget. Kennedy asked him to take over NASA. He came in already knowing how to work within Washington, how to work the complexities of negotiating with Congress, where the skeletons were buried when he needed them. He would try give and take, and when that didn't work, he would use Kennedy's objective, in the words of one writer, as a hammer.